dreaming in color. Lily Rodriguez punctuated the silence with a tap, her charcoal tip drumming against the textured paper as her brow furrowed. The fluorescent buzz of Farmer Joe's offered a dreary counterpoint to the burgeoning world captured in her sketchbook. An elderly apple, overlooked in shopper's haste, posed as her model. Its mottled skin, a mosaic of russet and viridian, whispered tales of sunlight and showers, birth and withering. She painstakingly replicated each flaw, each delicate play of illumination, absorbed in the meditative act of creation. The cue shuffled forward, a glacial advance. Up front, Mrs. Henderson, invariably adorned in flowered fabric and a whisper of lavender scent, haggled with the cashier over the price of organic greens. Lily didn't mind the delay. The humdrum grocery store was, paradoxically, a rich source of inspiration. Faces, gestures, brief exchanges, she absorbed them all, her mind filing away nuances for future compositions. Presently, a young parent struggling to manage a restless toddler snagged her attention. The child, a diminutive dynamo, was attempting a watermelon tower demolition. The parent's face, a canvas of weariness mixed with affection, offered a complex study. Lily dashed off a quick sketch, noting the slump of tired shoulders and the bright spark in the little one's eyes. Abruptly, a strident voice shattered her concentration. "Well, what have we here?" Lily's spirits sank. She knew that voice. Tiffany, Northwood High's resident alpha, stood just behind, bookended by her customary entourage. Tiffany's flawlessly painted lips twisted into a sneer. "Still scribbling, Lily? One would think you'd have abandoned that little pastime by now." Lily lowered her head, heat flooding her cheeks. "Just practicing," she muttered, wishing she could dissolve into her capacious hoodie. "Practicing for what? Finger painting class." Tiffany's laughter ricocheted through the aisle, attracting curious stares. One of Tiffany's companions, sporting unnaturally fair hair and a suspiciously deep tan, piped up. "Maybe she's drawing us, trying to immortalize our beauty." She struck a preposterous pose, fluttering her lashes. Lily yearned for the earth to open and swallow her whole. She clutched her sketchbook tighter, her knuckles bone white. She longed to tell them to leave her in peace, to champion her passion, but the words remained trapped. Instead, she focused on the apple, seeking comfort in its uniquely flawed form. Tiffany pressed on. "You know," she purred, her tone laced with saccharine venom. "Northwood Art Academy is holding auditions soon. Planning on making a fool of yourself by trying out?" Lily's breath caught. Northwood Art Academy. It was her aspiration, a luminous beacon in a murky world. She envisioned herself wandering its esteemed corridors, enveloped in the heady scent of oils and clay. She imagined herself absorbed at an easel in a sunlit studio, her hands stained with vibrant pigment, lost in creative flow. In her mind's theater, she saw her canvases displayed on pristine gallery walls, bathed in gentle light. People paused, captivated, their expressions mirroring a spectrum of sentiments. They saw the narratives she strived to convey, the beauty she discovered in the ordinary. They understood. The vision possessed such clarity, such palpable reality, that for a heartbeat, she lost herself. She forgot about Tiffany and her barbed remarks. She forgot about the judging looks and hushed insults. She was at Northwood Art Academy, and she was finally home. But the reverie shattered as Tiffany tapped a manicured nail against her sketchbook. "Earth to Lily. Still daydreaming? Let's be honest, some people are simply born with talent, and others are, well, you." The cashier announced, "Next," and Mrs. Henderson, clutching her kale, shuffled forward, oblivious to the silent skirmish behind her. Lily felt a desire to shrink, to disappear, but something stirred within, a nascent spark of defiance. The dream, so recently conjured, clung to her like a second skin. She closed her sketchbook, the image of the apple, now a symbol of newfound fortitude, burned into her consciousness. She wouldn't allow Tiffany to extinguish her aspirations. Not now. She might be timid, she might be insecure, but beneath that surface resolve was quietly solidifying. She would apply to Northwood Art Academy. She would labor harder than ever before, and she would prove them all wrong. The line cutter. The automatic doors hissed open, and Mark Thompson swaggered in, his shoulders practically scraping the frame. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket seemed to bounce off his shaved head, making him look even more menacing. He took a deep breath, savoring the cool, manufactured air, a welcome change from the humid parking lot. He needed chips, the king-size bag of barbecue, the ones he wasn't supposed to have. He was supposed to be eating salads with his mom, trying to bulk up the healthy way. Yeah, right? He scanned the checkout lines, a smirk playing on his lips. Friday afternoon. Perfect. The lines snaked around the magazine racks, a testament to the town's collective hunger for the weekend. He shoved his hands into the pockets of his ripped jeans, the metal studs glinting under the harsh lights. He started walking towards the shortest queue, spotting Mrs. Gable, the old lady who lived 2 doors down from him. She was a frail woman, her back hunched, her silver hair pulled back into a tight bun. Mark picked up his pace, aiming right for her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice thin and reedy as he slammed into her. Her hand, holding a carton of eggs, flew up in surprise. 2 of the eggs cracked on the side of the carton. "Watch it, Grandma," Mark growled, not bothering to offer an apology. He stepped in front of her, effectively cutting her off. Mrs. Gable stumbled back, her face paling. I was next," she stammered, clutching her chest. Her knuckles were white. Mark didn't even look at her. He tossed his bag of chips onto the conveyor belt with a loud thud. "Yeah, well, now I am." A murmur rippled through the line. A few heads turned, disapproval etched on their faces. Mark met their gazes, one by one, his eyes narrowed. A young mother with a toddler in the cart looked away quickly, fiddling with the baby's blanket. A skinny guy with glasses cleared his throat and pretended to read a magazine about fishing. He locked eyes with a man a few spots back, a guy with broad shoulders and a faded Harley-Davidson t-shirt. The man didn't flinch. In fact, a flicker of something, anger, amusement, crossed his face. Mark held his gaze for a beat longer, then snorted and turned back to the cashier, a pimply-faced teenager who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Paper or plastic?" the cashier mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Whatever," Mark said, pulling out a crumpled $10 bill. He leaned against the counter, drumming his fingers impatiently. He could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken judgment radiating from the other shoppers. Good. Let them be scared. Fear was respect, in his book. Mrs. Gable hadn't moved. She stood a few feet behind him, her shoulders slumped, her eyes fixed on the floor. He could practically feel her disappointment, her frustration. A wave of something that felt suspiciously like guilt washed over him, but he quickly squashed it down. He wasn't going to let some old lady ruin his afternoon. He needed those chips. He deserved those chips. The cashier finished scanning his purchase. "That'll be $4.79. Mark tossed the bill onto the counter. As he waited for his change, he glanced back at Mrs. Gable. She was still there, a ghost in the brightly lit aisle. But now, a new expression flickered across her face. It wasn't fear, not anymore. It was something else, something colder, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He grabbed his change and the bag of chips, shoving them into his pockets. He strode towards the exit, ignoring the stares, the whispers. He needed to get out of here to escape this suffocating atmosphere of judgment. And what was that feeling? He didn't like it. It was like a phantom itch he couldn't scratch. As he pushed through the doors, he risked one last glance back. Mrs. Gable was still there, her eyes locked on him. And this time, he swore, he saw a glint of steel in their depths. A glint that promised retribution. He shook his head, dismissing it as his imagination. Old ladies didn't plot revenge, did they? He hurried to his car, a beat-up Honda Civic that was more rust than metal, and peeled out of the parking lot, the roar of the engine a pathetic attempt to drown out the nagging feeling that he'd just made a very big mistake. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. He told himself he was just being paranoid. It was just an old lady. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. And he knew, with a chilling certainty, that he hadn't heard the last of this. Target acquired. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket hummed, a sterile counterpoint to the riot of colors exploding from Lily's sketchbook. She sat perched on the edge of a low display of watermelons, trying to capture the way the light glanced off their glossy green rinds. Each stroke felt tentative, a battle against the nagging voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like Tiffany. What's Picasso doing slumming it in produce? Lily's head snapped up. Mark Thompson stood over her, his sneer sharp enough to curdle milk. She knew him from school, a year above, perpetually surrounded by a pack of laughing hyenas. He was the kind of guy who made the hallways feel smaller, the air thicker. Her stomach clenched. Just drawing, she mumbled, instinctively shielding the sketchbook with her arm. Mark chuckled, a sound like gravel grinding. Drawing? That's what you're calling it? Looks more like a cat threw up on a page. He leaned closer, his shadow falling across her work. Seriously, Rodriguez, you think this is good? You're kidding yourself. Lily's fingers tightened around her charcoal pencil. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. He was doing exactly what Tiffany did, picking at the raw edges of her insecurity, making her question everything. He flipped through the pages, his movements careless and dismissive. Oh, look, a slightly less awful apple. Groundbreaking stuff. He stopped at a sketch of a gnarled oak tree she'd seen in the park, its branches reaching towards the sky like supplicating arms. This one she actually liked. She'd poured hours into it. Pathetic, he declared, tearing the page clean from the spiral binding. The ripping sound echoed in the sudden silence between them. Lily gasped, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. Why would you do that? He crumpled the sketch in his hand, his eyes glinting. Just saving you from further embarrassment. Trust me, the world doesn't need another bad artist. He tossed the crumpled paper onto the watermelon display, where it nestled amongst the shiny fruit like a discarded thought. A flash of anger, hot and sharp, pierced through Lily's fear. It was mine, she managed to say, her voice trembling but audible. Mark shrugged, the gesture oozing indifference. So, get over it. He seemed to relish her distress, the way her shoulders slumped, the flicker of tears in her eyes. But something was different this time. The anger didn't dissipate. It hardened, forming a small, defiant core inside her. She remembered Jason's words, echoing in her mind, protect what you love. Mark, though, didn't notice the shift. He was already moving on, his attention flitting towards a group of girls giggling near the bakery section. As he walked away, he didn't see the tightening of Lily's jaw, the clenching of her fist around her charcoal pencil. He didn't see the resolve hardening in her eyes. He only felt a strange, prickling unease at the back of his neck, a feeling he couldn't quite place. It wasn't guilt exactly, more like a premonition, as if the air around him had subtly changed, hinting at something unseen, something unpredictable brewing in his wake. He dismissed it, attributing it to the stale air of the supermarket. But the feeling lingered, a low hum beneath the surface of his usual bravado. He joined his friends, forcing a laugh, trying to shake off the unsettling sensation. He told himself it was nothing, just another day, another nameless face put in its place. But as he reached for a sample of chocolate fudge, he couldn't help but glance back towards the produce section. Lily was gone. Only the crumpled sketch remained, a testament to his casual cruelty. And for the first time, Mark felt a flicker of something that might have been, under different circumstances, regret. He quickly shoved it down, replacing it with a forced smirk. He was Mark Thompson. He didn't do regret. But the unease remained, a seed planted in the fertile ground of his conscience, waiting to sprout. Standing up, the fluorescent lights of the cafeteria hummed, a monotonous drone that amplified Lily's anxiety. Her hands, slick with sweat, gripped the edge of her tray. Mark Thompson, surrounded by his usual entourage, was holding it again. Her notebook. He flipped through the pages, his laughter echoing across the crowded room. Lily's stomach churned. She tried to ignore him, to pretend it didn't matter, but the sight of her sketches being paraded around like some grotesque trophy was too much. Each ripped page, each crude comment scribbled in the margins, felt like a personal violation. Tiffany, perched on the edge of the table, tossed her blonde hair and added her own shrill giggles to the din, taking a shaky breath. Lily pushed away from her table. Her legs felt like lead as she navigated the maze of tables and chairs. Each step was a battle against the urge to turn and run. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, the familiar sting of tears threatening to spill. "Mark," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She tried again, louder this time. "Mark, please stop." He didn't even look up. He held a page high in the air, a charcoal sketch of a willow tree weeping by the riverbank. "Look at this, guys." She calls this art? Looks more like a dead spider's web. His friends erupted in laughter. Even some of the people she didn't know were chuckling. The sound was a physical blow, sending a wave of nausea through her. Lily stood her ground, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wasn't sure where the courage was coming from, but a small, stubborn ember of defiance had ignited within her. "That's mine. Give it back." Mark finally looked up, his eyes narrowing. The amusement in his face was replaced with something else, something akin to surprise. "What's that, Rodriguez?" Did the little mouse finally find its voice? He snapped the notebook shut, the sound like a gunshot in her ears. "What if I don't want to give it back?" Lily's voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "It's mine. You have no right to take it." Tiffany scoffed. "Oh, poor baby. Is she going to cry?" Ignoring Tiffany, Lily focused on Mark. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a brief hesitation. For the first time, she realized he wasn't invincible. He was just a boy trying to feel big by making someone else feel small. "Just give it back, Mark." He stood up, towering over her. He still had that infuriating smirk on his face, but she sensed a shift in his demeanor. The laughter of his friends had died down, replaced by a hushed anticipation. "What are you going to do if I don't?" he challenged, his voice low. Lily didn't know. She had no plan. All she had was the burning need to reclaim something that was hers, something that represented a part of herself she was afraid to lose. She took a step closer, her gaze unwavering. "Just give it back." Mark hesitated. He looked around at his friends, as if seeking guidance. But they were silent, their faces a mixture of amusement and curiosity. He opened his mouth to say something, but then closed it again. The smirk faltered. He tossed the notebook onto the table, the worn leather cover landing with a soft thud. "Fine, take your stupid drawings." He turned away, shoving his hands into his pockets. Lily reached for the notebook, her fingers tracing the familiar outline of the cover. It was battered and bruised, but it was hers. As she clutched at her chest, she caught Mark's eye. He quickly looked away, a strange expression on his face. It wasn't defiance or amusement. It almost looked like shame. She turned and walked away, the hum of the fluorescent lights seeming to fade. She could feel the stares of the other students, but she didn't care. The notebook was safe in her arms, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it was no longer the overwhelming force that had controlled her for so long. She had stood up, and she hadn't broken. A painful blow. The fluorescent bulbs above the produce aisle buzzed, an irritating counterpoint to the turmoil churning within Lily. Tiffany's cutting words lingered, each syllable a tiny barb. "You? An artist? Seriously? Just look at you." Her gaze had flicked over Lily's paint-splattered attire and the charcoal smudge adorning her cheek, her lips curling into a dismissive smirk. Lily had almost found the courage to retort a practiced line about talent eclipsing labels. Almost. Then Mark had interceded, a solid presence radiating suppressed anger. "Lay off, Tiffany." It wasn't the words themselves, but the sheer force behind them that shocked Lily. A concentrated venom, directed not at Tiffany, but at her. He pivoted, his typically dull gray eyes now ablaze with a wounded fury. "Think you're too good for us now, Lily? Huh? With your fancy sketches and your head stuck in the clouds." Lily's throat constricted, leaving a coppery residue on her tongue. "I don't think that, Mark. What's gotten into you?" He advanced, cornering her against a precariously stacked pyramid of oranges. The citrus scent, usually refreshing, turned sickly sweet, oppressive. Tiffany, momentarily sidelined, observed with a blend of astonishment and something resembling malicious pleasure. "Quit pretending. You've been acting so different lately. Standoffish. Like we're beneath you." His voice dropped to a dangerous rumble, tight with barely leashed rage. "That's not true," Lily countered, the denial a bitter taste in her mouth. A nascent, rebellious part of her did feel different. She was evolving. No longer the Lily who craved their validation. He brushed aside her protest. "Think you can just ditch us, leave us in the dust, because you can scribble a pretty picture?" The injustice of his accusation burned. He was distorting everything, projecting his own insecurities. She began to form a retort, a defense, but the words snagged, trapped in her parched throat. She truly looked at him then, past the familiar facade, and saw a stranger consumed by a raw, desperate ugliness. And then the unthinkable. The air itself seemed to fracture. A shocking impact detonated against her face. Lily staggered back, her hand instinctively clamping over the searing throb blooming on her skin. Her vision blurred as the orange display dissolved into a swirling vortex of color. The sharp tang of blood filled her mouth. Mark had struck her. He had actually struck her. Time seemed to suspend itself. The overhead lights amplified, escalating into a deafening cacophony. A collective intake of breath swept through the produce section. An older woman clutching a bag of spinach let it drop with a soft thud. A young mother instinctively shielded her child's face. The cashier at the closest register froze mid-scan, her jaw slack. Lily stared, tears welling, blurring her vision further. Mark remained motionless, his hands suspended in midair, his face a canvas of stark horror. For an instant, she glimpsed something akin to remorse in his eyes, a fleeting echo of the boy she once knew. But the moment evaporated. Scalding tears streamed down her cheeks. A sob ripped from her chest, a primal sound of anguish and betrayal. The humiliation was a tangible burden, nearly unbearable. She whirled and fled, blindly navigating through the astonished shoppers, ignoring the susurrus of whispers and gazes that followed her. The automatic doors slid open, offering a bleak, antiseptic escape into the glaring expanse of the parking lot. She had no destination, no plan. Only the desperate need to escape. To escape Mark, escape Tiffany, escape the judging stares, escape the scalding shame. The world, once a landscape of possibility and blossoming aspirations, had abruptly shrunk, constricting around her like a suffocating prison forged from cruelty and pain. The unexpected hero. The fluorescent tubes above the produce section buzzed, bathing the drooping spinach in a sickly light. Mark Thompson stood with rounded shoulders, deflated by recent events. Lily Rodriguez, sketchbook clutched tight, observed him from short distance. He hadn't uttered a peep since Tiffany, trailed by her chorus line of cackling friends, had minced off, leaving behind a miasma of expensive perfume and scorn. "Mark," Lily ventured. He winced, muttering something unintelligible, his attention glued to a peach marred with bruises. Lily understood his humiliation. The scene had unfolded for all to see. Tiffany's taunts sharp as shattered glass, each shard aimed to inflict maximum damage. A twinge of remorse stung Lily. She'd caught Mark admiring her drawings before, a bashful light in his eyes. Now, he likely regretted the impulse. A man, seemingly absorbed in the art of avocado selection, had been a silent witness. Dressed down in a faded baseball cap shadowing his face, a gray hoodie, and dark glasses that failed to conceal a resolute jaw, he'd been present for Tiffany's grand entrance. Lily had registered, without understanding why, that he sized up the situation with a focus that belied his casual attire. He casually tossed a handful of avocados into his handbasket, then slouched against a pineapple display, arms folded. Mark finally lifted his gaze, eyes rimmed in red. I should go." Propelled by a sudden upwelling of defiance, Lily stepped closer. "Don't, Mark. Don't let her win." The words rang flimsy, even to her own ears, but she felt obligated to speak. Tiffany thrived on weakness, and Lily was weary of seeing people diminished under her cruel gaze. Mark merely shook his head, a gesture saturated with self-reproach. It doesn't matter, Lily. She's right. I'm just me. He brushed past her, heading for the automatic doors. That's when the man by the pineapple stirred. No shout, no sprint, just a movement of such purposeful resolve that it instantly commanded attention. He cut Mark off before he reached the exit, halting him with an understated yet undeniable authority. "Hold on a tick," the man rumbled, his voice a low, gravelly sound that sliced through the ambient grocery store noise. A distinctly British inflection colored his speech. Mark stopped short, startled. He looked up at the man, confusion slowly giving way to a flicker of apprehension. The man was built like a fortress, and even obscured by sunglasses, emanated an unmistakable aura of menace. "You all right, mate?" the man inquired, his tone deceptively gentle. Mark stammered, "I'm fine, just leaving." He attempted to slip around the man, who remained steadfast. "Doesn't look like you are. Looks like you allowed some unpleasant woman to run roughshod over you. Can't be having that, can we?" The man's gaze flicked towards Lily, a swift, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. Mark swallowed hard, the back of his throat dry. "It's complicated. Life invariably is," the man retorted, his voice gaining an edge. "But there's a core principle at stake. You don't let bullies prevail." "Got it." He jabbed a thick finger towards Mark's chest, stopping just short of contact, but close enough to convey the intended pressure. Mark's eyes darted around nervously. The man's intensity was unnerving, completely disorienting. He was accustomed to fading into the background, to anonymity. This was the antithesis of that. He spotted a few shoppers staring openly, their faces a tapestry of curiosity and unease. "Look, I don't want any trouble," Mark mumbled, his voice scarcely audible. "Trouble," the man chuckled, a mirthless, arid sound. "Trouble is allowing that kind of behavior to pass unchecked. Trouble is teaching the next generation that it's acceptable to demean others. Trouble is leading a life where you lack the courage to defend yourself." He paused, his gaze penetrating. "You're not going to let that be your story, are you, mate?" Lily watched, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had no idea who this man was, but his intervention had completely altered the power dynamics. For the first time since Tiffany's arrival, a tiny spark of hope ignited within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, things were on the cusp of change. The atmosphere vibrated with unspoken energy, the promise of a confrontation both frightening and exhilarating. Mark, caught in the middle, resembled a cornered rabbit, torn between flight and fight. Justice served. Mark Thompson, face flushed a blotchy crimson, shoved his way through the automatic doors, nearly bowling over a woman laden with reusable shopping bags. He didn't apologize, just kept his head down, a mumbled curse escaping his lips. He felt the weight of Tiffany's stinging words, the silent judgment of the onlookers, pressing down on him like a physical burden. All he wanted to do was disappear. "Mark, hold on a second." The voice, calm and surprisingly gentle, cut through his self-pity. He stopped, reluctant, and turned to see the man from the produce aisle, the one who'd been watching the whole debacle with unnerving intensity. Jason Statham, if Mark remembered correctly. What did he want? More humiliation? "Look, I know things got heated," Statham said, approaching slowly, hands held loosely at his sides. "But violence isn't the answer, Mark. It never is." Mark snorted. "Easy for you to say. You weren't just made a fool of in front of everyone." "Maybe not in the exact same way," Statham conceded. "But I understand the feeling of being pushed to the edge. Trust me, I do. But lashing out only makes things worse. For everyone." Mark balled his fists, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. He wanted to lash out. At Statham, at Tiffany, at the entire world that seemed to be conspiring against him. But something in Statham's steady gaze, his quiet authority, held him back. "Just leave me alone," Mark mumbled, turning to walk away again. "I can't do that, Mark. You're clearly not thinking straight, and someone could get hurt." Mark scoffed. "Who? You think I'm going to attack some innocent bystander?" Get real. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a gleaming switchblade. The metallic click as the blade snapped open echoed in the sudden silence of the parking lot. He hadn't intended to use it. Maybe just scare people. Let them see he wasn't someone to be trifled with. Statham's expression didn't change. He simply shifted his weight, his movements fluid and economical. Put the knife down, Mark. This doesn't have to end badly. Mark's hand trembled. He knew, deep down, that he was making a mistake. But the humiliation, the rage, were too overwhelming. He lunged, a clumsy, desperate swipe with the blade. Statham reacted with lightning speed. A blur of motion, a precise strike to Mark's wrist, and the knife clattered onto the asphalt. Before Mark could even register what had happened, Statham had him to hold, his arm twisted behind his back, not painfully, but firmly, immovably. Easy, Mark. Just calm down. Lily Rodriguez had been watching from the doorway, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. She'd felt a pang of guilt seeing Mark's defeated posture, the slump of his shoulders as he left the store. She hadn't meant for things to escalate so dramatically. She wanted to help him, to encourage him to stand up for himself in a constructive way, not this mess. Just then, Mrs. Davison, the grocery store manager, bustled out, her face a mask of concern. What's going on here? Is everything all right? Her eyes widened as she recognized Statham. Mr. Statham? Is there a problem? Statham, still holding Mark in a secure but non-threatening grip, looked up. This young man was about to make a very bad decision, Mrs. Davison. I've disarmed him, but I think the police should be involved. Mrs. Davison's jaw dropped. She stared at the knife lying on the ground, then at Mark's pale, sweating face. Good heavens! I'll call them right away. She scurried back inside, muttering about liability and store policy. Within minutes, the flashing lights of a police cruiser illuminated the parking lot. Two officers emerged, their expressions grim. They approached cautiously, drawing their weapons. Sir, step away from the suspect, one of the officers commanded Statham. Statham released Mark, who stumbled slightly, his face a mixture of shame and fear. He offered no resistance as the officers quickly handcuffed him. As Mark was being led away, he glanced at Lily, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of anger and desperation. Lily looked away, unable to meet his gaze. A wave of guilt washed over her, heavier than before. Had she inadvertently pushed him down a path he couldn't come back from? The police car pulled away, its siren wailing in the evening air. Statham turned to Lily, his expression unreadable. Sometimes, he said quietly, justice isn't about punishment. It's about preventing further harm. He paused, then added, and sometimes it's about giving people a chance to learn from their mistakes. He then walked towards his car. A new beginning. Shattered crayon remnants painted the linoleum floor, their saccharine wax aroma mingling with the sharp, acidic tang of spilled soda. Lily's gaze remained fixed on the mess, anxiety twisting in her gut. Tossed aside lay her sketchbook, its cover warped and smeared, next to a crushed tube of azure paint, a tableau of her mortification. Forget about it, a resonant voice soothed. Jason Statham, a figure of towering composure, knelt beside her. Methodically, he gathered up the fractured crayons, their once vivid hues muted beneath the grocery store's unforgiving lights. These things happen. Lily avoided his gaze. I should have been paying attention. Remorse pricked at her. It wasn't just the ruined art supplies. It was the entire humiliating episode, looping endlessly in her mind's eye. Chad's sneering expression, the sickening thud of the sketchbook hitting the floor, the surge of impotent fury that had consumed her. Jason's touch was surprisingly tender as he clasped her forearm. Hey, he murmured, his tone gentle. That kid was a grade-A jerk. Don't give him the power. And this. He indicated the scattered remains. We can salvage this. He began collecting the paint tubes, meticulously cleaning each one with tissues conjured from his pocket. A flicker of warmth cut through Lily's self-consciousness as she joined him. Working in companionable silence, she observed the capable strength in his hands, the careful way he handled even the most delicate items. There was something profoundly reassuring in it. Once they'd recovered what they could, Jason rose, offering a hand. "Come on," he suggested. "Let's replace some of this." He guided her to the stationery aisle, Lily trailing behind, still mortified, hyper-aware of the curious stares directed their way. Jason, however, seemed oblivious. He studied the shelves with an almost scientific focus, brow furrowed in concentration. "You any good, then?" he inquired, selecting a substantial sketchbook bound in leather. Lily shrugged, evading his gaze. "I like to draw." He opened the book, the pristine white pages gleaming invitingly. "Show me some of your work." With some reluctance, Lily displayed a few digital paintings on her phone. Mostly landscapes, fiery sunsets ablaze with color, portraits capturing fleeting expressions rendered in charcoal. Jason scrutinized the images, his expression inscrutable. Finally, he looked up, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "These are impressive, Lily. Seriously impressive. You've got genuine talent." His unexpected praise sent a flush creeping up her neck. Compliments, especially from someone like him, were rare. "Thanks," she mumbled, a spark of renewed energy flickering within her. "Don't let one imbecile extinguish it," Jason stated firmly. He pressed the leather-bound sketchbook into her hands. "Consider this a clean slate." He then proceeded to fill a basket with professional-grade pencils, charcoal sticks, and erasers, choosing each tool with the discerning eye of a surgeon selecting instruments. At the checkout, Lily protested, "You really don't have to do this. It's too much." Jason waved her concerns aside. "Nonsense. Think of it as an investment." He winked, "in a future masterpiece." As they left the store, the setting sun painting elongated shadows, Lily clutched the bag of art supplies. The weight of it felt markedly different from the weight of shame she'd borne earlier. This was the heft of possibility, of potential realized, of reinvention. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Really, thank you, Mr. Statham." He paused, turning to face her. "Jason," he corrected gently. "And don't mention it. Just promise me you won't let that kid's words define you. You're better than that, Lily. Now go conjure something amazing." Lily nodded, a genuine smile illuminating her face. The humiliation hadn't entirely dissipated, but was eclipsed by a nascent sense of optimism. Perhaps she could transform this unpleasant experience into something beautiful. The empty pages of the sketchbook beckoned, yearning to be filled with her visions, her dreams, her art. And for the first time that day, Lily felt a stirring of anticipation, a small flame of creativity igniting within. The world, even with its share of bullies and scattered messes, suddenly felt brimming with promise. The ripple effect. A charged stillness filled the air that morning. Lily navigated the school corridors, each step a weighty declaration. Glances shot her way, whispers followed, but this time she didn't flinch. Chin lifted slightly, sketchbook clutched like a shield, she pressed on. The news of Mark Thompson's arrest had spread like a shockwave. The details were a twisted tapestry of conjecture, but the central thread remained stark. Grocery store, slap, Jason Statham, arrest. The last element felt ripped from the pages of her unfinished comics. Jason Statham? Unbelievable. Snatching fragments of conversation, Lily edged through the throng. Assault charges for Mark. Can you believe it? Always knew he was bad news. Jason Statham, of all people. A brittle laugh punctuated the remark. Mark's empire, built on arrogance and entitlement, was fracturing. She saw it in the averted eyes, the muted greetings replacing his usual bluster. His locker, once a shrine to football victories and self-portraits, was now bare, as if scrubbed clean of any association with his transgression. The shame was a tangible presence, a heavy cloak smothering the school. Beneath it, however, a fragile hope flickered. Perhaps a shift was coming. Maybe people would pause before wielding power without thought. Absent from school, Mark was likely walled in his opulent home, the silence amplifying his dread. He must be petrified. The shame, a burden he'd so readily imposed on others, would weigh heavily now. This was a far cry from the insouciant swagger he usually projected. He had been the untouchable monarch. Now, he was just another kid facing consequences. That afternoon, Lily's feet led her not home, but to the art room, a haven she'd avoided for weeks, its atmosphere poisoned by Mark's jeering laughter. The familiar aroma of clay and paint, once a source of solace, had become a trigger for unease. Today, however, the air felt different, somehow purified. She picked up a charcoal stick, its weight a reassuring anchor. Tentatively at first, then with growing conviction, she began to draw. The grocery aisle materialized, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. She captured the fear reflected in her own eyes. Then, she sketched Jason Statham, an imposing figure of unexpected redemption. The image surged from her hand, imbued with an unrecognized strength. It wasn't just a picture, it was a statement. A testament to resilience, to the potential for hope to bloom from the most unlikely soil. Days bled into weeks. Mark remained suspended, his future hanging in the balance. Slowly, the school began the process of recovery. And Lily? Lily began to blossom, channeling her energy into her art, her sketchbook transforming into a sanctuary for her emotions, her fears, and her aspirations. She entered a local art competition, submitting the charcoal sketch of that stark grocery store scene. She won. The accolade ignited a fire within, validating both her talent and her perspective. She applied to Northwood Art Academy, a prestigious institution renowned for its rigorous curriculum and dedication to nurturing emerging artists. The application process was intimidating, but Lily persisted, fueled by a newfound purpose. Finally, the letter arrived. Heavy, cream stock, the Northwood seal shimmering in gold. Lily inhaled sharply as she tore it open. "We are pleased to inform you." Her heart hammered as she scanned the page. Acceptance. Northwood Art Academy. Tears welled, spilling down her cheeks. She had succeeded. She had conquered the fear, the shame, the self-doubt. She had discovered her voice and her direction. Later that night, as she lay in bed, the grocery store scene replayed in her mind. Mark's contemptuous smirk, the stinging impact of his hand, then the quiet, unwavering presence of Jason Statham. He had intervened, not for applause or recognition, but simply because it was the just thing to do. Whether she would ever have the opportunity to express her gratitude directly remained unknown. Yet, she knew with unwavering certainty that she would never forget his compassion. It had served as a turning point, a catalyst for change. He had planted a seed of hope, which had since blossomed into something beautiful, something powerful. Lily smiled, a genuine, deeply felt smile. Her life had been irrevocably altered by a single act of violence and an act of remarkable courage. As she drifted to sleep, she recognized that the ripples of that day would continue to shape her trajectory, guiding her on her path toward becoming the artist she was destined to be. The memory of Jason Statham, the unexpected benefactor, would remain etched in her memory, a constant reminder that even amidst the darkest aisles, the possibility of light endures.